Good morning. It is already April 12th, and we've had a dynamic week this week. Actually, pretty big gains in the grains this week. May corn up 30 cents, May soybeans up 60 cents, May Chicago wheat up 27, May Minneapolis up 29. Some big moves higher in the markets. And actually, this was supposed to be the week with our trade wars going on that prices of agriculture would collapse. Wow, the experts couldn't have been more wrong. Actually, in outside markets, we had a dynamic shakeup, which makes you wonder if the globalists have been taking advantage of U.S. agriculture for decades. Because as we try to level the playing field in world trade, agricultural prices in the U.S. are skyrocketing, which is shocking, actually. Will that continue? Well, that's a good question. But this week, May crude oil didn't move much, but we had huge declines, $7 declines the week before, held most of those losses and actually went down a little more. June gold rockets $209 higher to new all-time 6,000-year highs. The Dow ends up gaining 1,870 points, up 3,000 on Wednesday, actually reversed from the low, 4,000 points that day. The dollar down 2.8 points, down almost 3% this week. The dollar is collapsing. That is a new yearly low. Let's look at the charts because that is where all the interest lies. Look at the corn chart, gone straight up. We've actually had 7 straight days of gains. And the corn chart is approaching almost the old highs for the year. And one thing I think about is 7 straight days up actually was justify a sale. So on Monday morning, catch up sales or even advancing some of those old crop sales may not be a bad idea if we have some gains to start the day on Monday. Just take advantage of some of this pretty big price increase here. And the other markets, though, soybeans showing some gains as well, 60-cent gains in soybeans, mostly going higher and actually turning this trend almost to up. So nice, nice gains. We did have an April USDA report. Did anyone notice? Did anyone even care? Because actually, the markets were reacting to these outside markets more than anything. Corn actually ending stocks down 75 million bushel. And actually, I would argue they increased exports 100 million, cut feed use 25. I would argue actually feed use should have risen based on the stocks report. So the USDA did some funny math only to drop at 75 million bushel. Soybeans down 5 million bushel, mainly because of demand on the crush, the domestic crush. Wheat up 27 million bushel. Market reacted about 2 hours to this report and then went to trading all the outside things that are happening. And there is a lot happening. If you look at the wheat markets, we had gains, but actually we're just coming off the lows of the year in Chicago wheat. And think about that. This is in spite of, the last 2 weeks rainfall. We had very heavy rain here, might delay planting, but look at what happened in winter wheat country. We actually healed up a lot of winter wheat country that's been on the dry side, and still wheat prices were higher this week in spite of that. It's interesting. Spring wheat, following the winter wheat higher, but actually showing some pretty decent gains on weeks that we're supposed to have big tariff wars. Ooh, we should be scared. Trade wars are going to cause ag prices to collapse. Exactly the opposite. And let's look at some of these outside markets. Really, the grains look like they did nothing this week compared to what is happening in the outside markets. Look at the crude oil, crumbled lower, $7 the week before. This week we held almost all of those gains, actually lost another 50 cents. Crude oil is actually a good $4 or $5 below the lowest price of the year. So energy prices are going to get much, much cheaper for agriculture going forward. And the gold market, gold soaring, over $200 this week. Look at the gains Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, of course, was the day that Trump basically said, hey, we got 75 countries that want to negotiate reduction of trade barriers. So he dropped the tariffs to 10% for 75 of those countries. Eliminated the trade war with most of the world. What's left is a major trade war with China. So a lot changed on Wednesday. We went from picking a fight with the whole world on trade to pretty much picking a fight with China. And China seems like they're up for the battle. I don't know how they're going to win because we import about 4 or 5 times more from China than they import from us. So you're fighting a fight that you can't win to try and fight a trade war with the United States, a big buyer of the rest of the world's gold. But think about this on the gold side. You know, gold running to new all-time highs. And as we go forward, we're going to look at some of these outside markets. Look at the Dow. The Dow dropped, huge to new lows for the year. And of course, we had a 4,000 point rebound on Wednesday once the world realized, hey, we're not going to be in a trade war with everyone, mostly just China. Over 100% tariffs now on both, China on the U.S. and U.S. on China. Going back and forth. So the trade war now is pretty much with China. And look at this other interesting development. US dollar on Friday goes to a new yearly low. And look at what's happened since January. US dollar gained 10% at the end of last year. We've lost all of that 10% and more. Actually, think about it. We have 10% tariffs left, temporary 90-day on 75 countries, most of the rest of the world. But you know what? We have 10% tariffs now that weren't there, but we just lost 10% on the dollar. So the price of U.S. goods to the rest of the world is probably cheaper than it was prior to the start of the trade war. Why? Because the U.S. dollar has dropped 10% in just a few months. We dropped, 4%, 4.5% just in the past 2 weeks. So, wow. Is the rest of the world going away from the dollar and going towards gold as its currency value? These are huge changes. The United States has been living off of the rest of the world using the dollar as an exchange. We ticked off half the world. The BRICS countries are trying to start an alternative. Hey, what about gold? So why is gold rallying to new all-time 6,000-year highs at the same time that the US dollar is collapsing? How? And actually, think about agriculture. The US dollar collapses. Ag products become cheaper, and the United States is a huge exporter, one of the most efficient countries in the world in producing ag product. And we can compete apparently everywhere. And really, has agriculture been poorly treated based on U.S. trade policy the last 30 or 40 years? Look at what's happening to prices, to ag prices, as we're renegotiating trade. In contrast to all the so-called experts, ag prices have gone considerably higher. And there's a lot still to be worked out in the markets. But wow, this is actually a very bullish development. If that dollar continues lower, ag prices could very well be bottoming, making like a 3-year low. We could see ag prices go up for the next 2 or 3 years. That could be very, very interesting. But a lot of positive developments, a lot of good things happening here in agriculture. If you've got some corn that you need to move, though, we have a positive opening on Monday morning. Maybe it's a good time, with 7 or 8 straight days higher to make some corn sales. So a lot of positive developments here in agriculture, and there's a lot of experts that are going to have to do a little head scratching and figure out how they were so wrong on the impact of trade wars on agriculture. Hope you have a great weekend and good marketing.